the most popular questions that I receive is on the topic of NPCs, otherwise known as non-player characters, or as Dolores Cannon coined the term, background characters. So today I'm going to be explaining exactly what NPCs are and their true origins. The overall concept of NPCs, or non-player characters, did not originate within the spirit of this age. However, the most recent story or element of this background characters concept was given to us by Dolores Cannon, whose work revealed that there is some sort of composite, human-like people that are a part of our reality, but that don't actually have souls. They don't actually composite a unit within themselves of consciousness. And in that sense, they're strictly energy. They're just a matrix simulation version of a person that appears in every way like they are a real living human being with a soul, but that they are just energy. They're a simulated version of a human in order to animate and enhance and even amplify our experience here in the third dimension. And so what this came from was a way to explain why some beings have more of what we would call a higher consciousness or more of a soulful and developed soul within our being, why we can see through illusions that other people don't seem to be able to see through, or that we can think for ourselves, or that we have certain capacities of critical thinking that other people don't seem to display that they have, or that they don't even seem to have the capacity for. If you'd like to know more about this, you can watch my video on this topic, Energy Vampires. That video goes more into depth about how unconscious individuals can act in every way energetically vampirical without even meaning to, simply because unconsciousness is bound to drain. It's just draining. That's the nature of being unconscious. So when it comes to these NPCs, what is looked at is that they're more of like the background characters, as though we're in a movie and we're the main character, and that they provide all of the different extras that we need inside our scenes of our life. Why? To enhance our own learning ability, so that us, the ones who have a soul and the ones who have a consciousness embodied within our physical vessel, can learn and can better have the friction from these background characters supplied to us. According to Dolores Cannon's research from hypnotherapy sessions, non-player characters do not have a higher self. They are projections of energy that are taken from one star system to another to play background character roles. They are holographic images that are made solid by the attention that individuals who do have a soul give them. Whether we think that Miss Cannon had incorrectly received this information based on her own belief systems, or we fully believe that backdrop characters exist, non-player characters have no creative spark. They are described as software programs that have no real purpose other than to be the extras in our play. But they help our own evolution by creating a realistic atmosphere for us to live out our experience in, as well as enhancing our curriculum in this dimension, especially by learning how to raise our frequency into compassion and unconditional love. It's kind of like shadow boxing or sparring. That's where in this new age and the spirit of this age, background characters comes from. There's one more version of this story though, that's relevant within the spirit of this age. And in this version, there's a far more compassionate lens that is filtered through this narrative. And with that one, what this has to do with background characters, why there's even a necessity for non-playing characters, beings that don't have a soul and that look like they're just running a simulation, would be because of extreme amounts of torture, trauma, and suffering. So in this version of the story of why background characters exist, they exist more so for the purpose of when real, live humans who have a soul, but aren't displaying those features of having a soul, act in very traumatizing ways and inflict physical pain onto others. So in this version of why non-player characters exist, it would be because the organic matrix that we are projecting our consciousness into to have this physical third dimensional experience has innately within it free will. And so a soulful individual can use their free will to inflict extraordinary amounts of physical pain onto others. But this organic matrix doesn't agree with that. And so even though they can't stop and intervene on a souled person's free will to inflict pain, what they can do is swap out that individual that is having that amount of extraordinary physical pain inflicted onto them. So if they can't stop the free will of a person who's in a state of torturing another, what they can at least do is swap out the souled being that's having that amount of extraordinary pain inflicted on them, and then put in its place a part of that matrix energy. So it's animated there, and it's still having the pain inflicted, but that there's not an actual consciousness that is having that amount of torture inflicted upon them. The reason why this story of the background characters came into fruition is due to the fact that if we are in an organic matrix, then it would operate in a way that's most efficient. And looking from things from strictly an efficiency point of view, it simply would not be beneficial and therefore efficient for that souled individual who's having that amount of torture inflicted upon them to be able to go through that experience, because it would take them around 20 more lifetimes after that to even deal with, grapple with, and start beginning to heal that amount of pain given within that lifetime. But that individual, the souled unit that's inflicting that pain, has not only free will, but also their own lessons and therefore their own karma involved with that situation. So the situation cannot be stopped. And the situation also is something that the one who's inflicting the pain needs to learn and develop through, or with their own free will choose to not develop through. And so in this version of the narrative of background characters, we're looking at this organic matrix as being one that has an inclination. It has a bias towards being beneficial and loving because love is efficient. I would personally so love for this version of background characters to be the truth, knowing that there's this organic matrix that is fueled by compassion and substitutes a player in for one that's just animated energy in order for that lesson to still be carried out, but not at the total travesty and fragmentation of the being that's receiving that level of abuse. However, I've seen in my personal life experiences dealing with others, this is not the case. People go through horrific challenges, horrific levels of abuse, and end up coming out not being a non-player character. But I do like that version of the story. So the question becomes, why would the New Age become so narcissistically inclined that we truly believe that we are the main characters within this storyline, and that anything that is outside of our environment and outside of our microcosm sphere of reality is actually just lessons that are being played out by animated energy that aren't filled with composites of soul? This actually doesn't come from a super megalomaniac perception. This was one more element, one more gift to a larger and far ancient story that has to do with what this concept of non-background characters is. It originates within Gnosticism. So in Gnosticism, there are 3 categories of beings here in human form. What they are hylics, psychics, and pneumatics. When I'm referring to a class of humans that are grouped together known as psychics, it has nothing to do with psychic abilities. It's in reference to souled individuals. Psyche is correspondent with the soul. And this has been known since ancient times. The psyche is a representative of the soul. Pneumatics are what you could call the most soul and therefore the most embodiment of spirit within our human experience. So you have the pneumatics, being what you would call the most highest consciousness humans. And then you have the psychics, which are souled individuals, but they're not as developed, they're not as evolved and further along in their evolutionary process as the pneumatics. And then you have this third grade of soul group here. And this third grade is called the Helix. If you'd like to know more about these 3 different categories of soul groups, you can watch my video on this topic titled The 3 Types of Souls Inside This Matrix. So in this last category of Helix, this would be where the origins of what we know today in this new age as non-player characters come from. Because in this older version of the story, the Helix were the group soul here that did not have an individuated soul. They more corresponded with the element of matter, meaning they weren't made up much of spirit and of soul. So they came from a pool. The main feature of this group is their dependency on the material world to access truth. Their level of awareness is confusion, because their inner world is no more than cognitive dissonance. They do not have a link to the heart center or the 3 higher energy centers. They source their energy entirely from material existence, yet they enrich our own journey through the contrast that they provide. How many times have we debated a family member at a holiday dinner who refused to acknowledge some deeper layer of reality beyond their worldview? They help us become aware of our blind spots and expectations through their denial. And so when it comes to these Helix, it's a very low level of human consciousness. It's in its most base form, to the point where Leonardo da Vinci would have called it the third category: those who see when shown, but those who do not see. The Helix, or the background characters in this case, are those that do not see. They do not have the capacity to see in this lifetime. That does not make them completely animated by an organic matrix. That does not make them sheerly energy. In fact, Boris Moraviev, in his book Gnosis, has a trilogy, and within it he speaks about there being organic portals. Organic portals. Once again, you have this theme of unconsciousness, background characters, or what we would call organic portals. And the most famous reference within the spirit of this age to what this older theme called organic portals or Helix would be in reference to is in the movie The Matrix, when the agent can insert himself into any person whose consciousness is still plugged into the matrix, meaning they don't operate individuated. They're not their own sovereign entity. They're still plugged into a larger pool, and that larger pool can be a portal. And so in this sense, they're not sheerly synthetic, they're organic, meaning they're human, but yet they can be this portal that's used in order to attack others or in order to hinder others progress or whatever have you. They don't have a mind of their own. And this organic portal concept is what we know in this age as the agent that can go and tap into any person that's plugged into the matrix. So you see this constant theme, because it's really easy to just call the new age super hyper narcissistic for coming up with these background characters. But that's our way in this age of understanding a concept that has a more holistic perception to it. And it's not necessarily, they're here for our growth, because the universe in and of itself has no charity. That means that any time a being is in some sort of reality that they've opted into, where other individuals don't have souls or don't have a developed soul the way that they do, that doesn't mean that they're here departing their charity onto others. Organic portals, or in this sense, Helix, do have the capacity to become souled individuals and to become like Pinocchio, a real boy by engaging with souled individuals and with the pneumatic class. So they do gain a tremendous amount by having this shared experience, because our soul unit is reflecting upon ourselves through them, and our spirit is allowing them to entrain to their own. So it's kind of like growing a plant. We water them with our capacity to engage and interact with them. But if we're expecting them to come into fruition, come into full life within this lifetime, that will not happen. That's just not the capacity. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's nothing about inferiority or superiority. We could even look at ourselves as once being at this stage of development. Would we look down on ourselves? Would we even look down on a child? No. So in this case, the organic portals or Hylics or NPCs, whatever we want to call them, aren't actually just holographic images that are meant to make our experience feel more real. As a matter of fact, innocently enough, that comes from the thought form of solipsism. And solipsism is the shadow side of oneness. It's where we tap into oneness, but it's a confused state of oneness where we kind of just think everything's about us. But instead, if the universe doesn't depart charity onto anything, then there's inherently some sort of advantage that we ourselves would gain by interacting inside a shared experience where there's these different levels of development or these different levels of growth. The universe doesn't care about PC. And it would also explain why my neighbors never bring home groceries, even though I don't watch. But the truth of the matter is they just have an entirely different curriculum than the other soul groups. And it might involve not eating. In fact, no matter how much spirit we come into this reality with, everyone starts off more or less in a state of possession. This is just point blank true. Whenever we come into such an unconsciously inclined experience, whether it's for our learning capacity, growth, whatever your personal paradigm is, it's coming through with the inclination towards there being so many different forces that act upon the souled individual that everything becomes so highly influential, a person cannot truly say that they are the one calling the shots. They are the ones taking those free will actions. They are the ones that are having a strong enough clarity and awareness in order to move through their life uninfluenced. And because of that, we all come in straight up possessed. And it's only people who start developing their own consciousness. It's that journey from Pinocchio to a real boy that we all go through that gives us more and more soul. It gives us more consciousness, and with that, more creative essence. So all of us are in our own way going through our own journey into becoming more real. I hope Why Don't My Neighbors Eat? Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.